On the day I gave my son the house of his dreams, he and his wife asked me to leave. And just like that, the home meant to keep us together became the wall that pushed me out. My name's John Harper. I'm 76, retired naval engineer, lived in Houston my whole life. My hands are still strong, but I've been waking up slower lately. You know the feeling when your bones ache before the sun rises? My son David is everything I have left. He was just 10 when I lost his mom. Cancer took her too quick for us to say goodbye properly. After that, I raised him the best way I knew how, with structure, honesty, and a roof over his head that didn't leak in the rain. I never remarried, never felt the need. David became my purpose, my lighthouse in the fog. When he met Angela, his wife now, I was happy for him. Genuinely. She's sharp, ambitious, polite enough. She doesn't like small talk, which I always found a little odd, but hey, maybe I just talk too much. They had a little girl a few years back, Megan. That child lit me up in ways I thought were long gone. She calls me Granddad Johnny, draws me lopsided houses in crayon, and insists I tape them to the fridge. Even though I don't have one of those fancy stainless steel ones that magnets stick to anymore. Anyway, let me get to the point. 2 years ago, I started planning something. Quietly. I'd been putting money aside, military pension, odd mechanical work here and there. I don't travel, don't gamble, don't collect anything fancy. So I saved. I wanted to do something big for David and his family. Something lasting. Not just birthday cards or the occasional check. I found a house. A beautiful one. On the west side, near a good school, big porch, garden in the back. It even had a little workshop, just the kind David used to pretend he had when he was a kid. It wasn't just a gift, it was my way of staying close. I imagined Sundays together, barbecues, helping Megan plant tomatoes in the spring, sharing coffee with Angela, maybe even growing into the kind of quiet friendship I'd always hoped for. So I bought it. Clean deal, paid in full, told them it was theirs. All of it, title and keys. I remember Angela blinking twice, like she couldn't believe it. David hugged me, eyes glassy. Megan shrieked and ran upstairs yelling. This is my room even though they hadn't picked one yet, I thought. This is it. This is how it begins. We planned a housewarming. Just family and a few close friends. I brought over the old cedar rocking chair from my porch. Refinished it myself. Thought it would look nice under the window in their living room. I even brought a bottle of wine. Cheap stuff, but good enough. That afternoon, people came and went. Laughter echoed down the hallway. Megan gave tours like a little realtor. I stood on the porch with a paper plate of ribs, watching David talk with co-workers and old friends. Angela looked radiant, smiling, poised. Everything felt right, until it didn't. See, I'm not the kind of man who imagines slights. I spent 20 years on naval vessels. You learn to read the room. And something shifted. Angela's smiles didn't reach her eyes when she looked at me. David was distracted, nervous. Even every time I mentioned our porch or our backyard, Angela's jaw tightened, just slightly. But I noticed, later that evening. I went to put the rocking chair by the window. Angela stopped me, said it didn't fit the aesthetic, suggested I take it back, said she'd ordered a sleek bench off the internet instead. It stung more than it should have, but I nodded. Told her, no problem. As the sun started to dip, I stepped outside to give them space. Stood by the sidewalk, holding the rocking chair. Guests were leaving, cars pulling out. Megan waved at me from the upstairs window. I waved back. That's when I realized No one was inviting me back in. Not Angela. Not David. Not even my own shadow felt welcome on the porch I'd imagined growing old beside. And in that moment, something inside me cracked, not loud, not messy, just quietly, like a seam giving way in the hull of a ship. I didn't say goodbye. I just carried the chair back to my truck, placed it in the bed, and drove home. That night, I sat on my tiny balcony with a mug of instant coffee and listened to the rocking chair creak gently in the dark. I'd given them everything, but somehow, I no longer belonged anywhere. The house was a craftsman-style blue shutters, white trim, the kind you see in family calendars. When I first found it, it needed work, but I liked that. I wanted to leave a bit of myself in the place. I refinished the floors by hand, sanded every board in that porch, painted the nursery soft green, even though Megan was too old for cribs. I thought maybe, someday, they'd have another. I paid cash. No mortgage, no favors. I didn't want to hold anything over their heads. This wasn't leverage. It was love, plain and simple. Angela thanked me. But with the tone people use when they unwrap socks for Christmas, David smiled. But there was something in his eyes I couldn't place. Guilt, hesitation. I chalked it up to nerves. I told them I'd stay with friends for the weekend so they could settle in. I didn't want to be in the way. Just bring the rocker, Megan had said. So I know it's really ours. The housewarming party came that Saturday. The lawn looked sharp. Angela had coordinated throw pillows and cut flowers and matching napkins. I brought brisket. That's always been my thing. Folks came, laughed, toasted, posed for pictures in front of the fireplace. It should have felt like a dream come true, but something kept catching in my chest, like a loose thread snagging on a nail you don't see. Angela hovered near David all evening. If I offered to hang a picture, she declined, said they'd hire someone. I offered to bring over tools to set up the garage. She smiled and said, "We're good. John, you've done enough." It wasn't the words. It was the way she said them, like I was a handyman who'd overstayed his welcome. Still, I stayed polite. I cleaned up cups, laughed at the jokes, patted backs, watched Megan twirl in her socks across the wood floor I'd finished myself. Then it happened. I'd stepped into the hallway to fetch my jacket. I wasn't snooping, just needed some air. That's when I heard them. Angela and David. "In the dining room, just out of sight. He can't keep showing up like this," Angela whispered. "Tight. He bought the house." David said. "We owe him. Angela cut him off. It's his money, sure. But that doesn't give him the right to insert himself into our home." Silence. Then she added, "I didn't sign up to live with your father's ghost in every corner of my house. I stood there. Frozen, jacket half on, my heart didn't break, it crumpled. Quiet and slow, like paper folding in on itself. I slipped out the back door and walked to the sidewalk. Megan was waving to a neighbor, beaming with a juice box in hand. The night air was cool. Somewhere down the street, someone was grilling. Inside, people clinked glasses, laughed, smiled. But I could feel it, the walls were closing. They'd taken the house, but left no room for the man who gave it. Angela didn't look for me. David didn't either. I sat on the curb for a moment, then stood up and walked to my truck. I placed the rocking chair gently in the back. It creaked like it was sighing with me. As I backed out, I saw them through the window laughing, arms around each other, toasting again. They smiled for the guests. But inside those walls, I could feel the locks clicking shut. The following week was quiet. Too quiet. I didn't hear from David. Not a text. Not a call. No thanks again. Dad. No update about how Megan was settling in. I figured maybe they were still unpacking. Or maybe, I told myself, they just needed space to settle. But when space becomes silence, it starts to feel like something else. I waited until Saturday and decided to swing by with a little gift. A birdhouse I'd built, hand-painted with Megan's favorite colors. I even carved her initials at the bottom. Thought it might be a sweet surprise for the backyard. I knocked, waited, no answer. The lights were on. I could hear the dishwasher running. Megan's laugh floated through an open upstairs window. I knocked again. Still nothing. After a few minutes, I set the birdhouse gently on the front porch and got back in my truck. As I reversed, I caught Angela peeking through the side curtain. She saw me, but she didn't wave. Just let the fabric fall back into place. I remember gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I'd been locked out of more than just a house. That night, I sat on my porch and stared at nothing for a long time. The rocker creaked beneath me. Same rhythm as always. Just lonelier. I thought about all the late nights when David was young. I'd come home from shifts at the shipyard and still make sure he ate. Did his homework. Brushed his teeth. I used to tape his spelling words to the fridge. Wrote him letters when I had to be at sea. Helped him learn how to shave. Sat in the ER with him when he cracked his chin open trying to skateboard. And now I was some ghost in his life. Some inconvenient reminder of a time he'd rather leave behind. I picked up the phone and called Susan, my late wife's sister. She's always had a way of cutting through nonsense with kindness. She's got a tight grip on him. John, she said gently. But that doesn't mean he's lost to you. Give it time. I gave them a house. Susan, I muttered. I thought I was giving them a future. I didn't know I was giving up my place in it. She didn't have an answer. Just told me to eat something and rest. The next day, Reggie came by, my old Navy buddy. He's seen me through the worst storms, literal and emotional. I poured us coffee on the porch, told him everything. The look, the coldness, the silence. He leaned back, scratched his beard, and said, "You gave them the house, brother. But did you give away your power too?" What power, I asked. I wasn't trying to control anything. I just wanted to stay close. And now you're out here, talking to me instead of reading bedtime stories to your granddaughter. He said, "It hit me then. Maybe I hadn't just been generous, I'd been naive. I'd built a house, thinking it would build a bridge. But maybe they saw it as a wall." I started replaying things. Angela's controlling tone. The way David kept looking to her for permission to speak. The way Megan's voice had changed from unfiltered joy to careful quiet when Angela entered the room. And me, I'd been too busy planning Sunday dinners to notice I'd become an outsider in my own legacy. Have you ever been pushed aside by the people you love the most, just because you gave too much? If so, share your story in the comments. I'd truly love to hear it. Sometimes it helps just to know you're not the only one who gave their heart away and got silence in return. Back at home, I opened my toolbox, not for repairs, but to stay busy. My hands still work. My heart. That's another story. But something inside me stirred that night. Not anger. Not sadness. Just a quiet. Growing clarity. Maybe they took the house. But I still had something worth holding on to. And I wasn't ready to let it go. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure if I was their father or just their wallet. A week passed before I went back. I didn't want to play the fool, showing up uninvited. But something in me needed closure, or maybe just confirmation that I wasn't imagining it all. The sun was setting when I pulled into the street. Their house, the house I gave them, looked pristine. But there was a new SUV in the driveway. Parked in my old spot, and taped to the front door, right where the welcome sign used to hang, was a sheet of paper, black letters, big and bold, "No visitors." I sat there for a while. Engine off, windows down. The wind blew the scent of fresh mulch from the flower beds I'd planted myself. I could have knocked, could have demanded answers, but I didn't. Instead, I reached into the glove box, pulled out a yellow legal pad, and wrote a letter. Nothing dramatic, just the truth. I raised you the best I knew how. I gave you a house, not because I owed you, but because I loved you. If that's not enough for you to open the door, then maybe it's time I stopped knocking. I folded it neatly and slid it under the mat. That night, I walked to the park, sat on the bench where I used to push Megan on the swings. I didn't expect anything, but sometimes life surprises you. She came walking up, wearing that same oversized hoodie I bought her last Christmas. No phone, no adult words, just a kid, with eyes full of worry. "Grandpa," she whispered. "Why don't you come over anymore?" I blinked hard, cleared my throat. "Sometimes grown-ups forget who built the house they're standing in," I said softly. She looked down, nodding like she understood more than she should have. "I miss you," she said. That night. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat with the ache. Then I made a decision. I called an old buddy, a semi-retired attorney, and asked him to double-check something. Turned out the house was still in my name. Entirely. I could have made things hard. Could have kicked them out. But what would that solve? I didn't want revenge. I wanted respect. I wanted to stop disappearing just because I was quiet. That's when I remembered something my father once said. You don't have to raise your voice when your work speaks for you. So I went out back to the shed and pulled out the cedar rocking chair that had belonged to my father. It was old, dusty, splintered, and full of stories. I decided to restore it. Not just as a project, but as a promise. A reminder that legacies aren't built in deeds or square footage. They're built in time, patience, and the hands that hold things together when they're breaking. Each night, I sanded, smoothed, repaired. If they closed the door on me, maybe it was time I opened another on my terms. 3 weeks passed without a word. The rocking chair was nearly done. I'd sanded every groove, replaced the cracked leg, and sealed it with linseed oil, just like my father taught me when I was a boy. It was slow, careful work, but it gave my hands something to do and gave my heart something steady to lean on. Then the phone rang. I saw the name David. My thumb hovered over the green button. I thought about letting it go to voicemail, but something told me to answer. His voice came through fast and panicked. "Dad, I need to talk to you. It's the house. The foundation's cracked. There's water in the basement. We had a guy come out. He said it's serious. Insurance won't cover it because of some clause in the transfer paperwork. Angela's ready to just sell, but I don't know what to do." He paused, waiting for me to say something, to jump in, to fix it. I leaned back in my chair, looked out the window at the dusk settling over my backyard. "You're not calling for advice." "David," I said evenly, "you're calling for a bailout." There was silence on the line. I didn't mean for it to be like this. He finally said, "I know." I replied, "But you made choices. So did I." He asked if we could talk in person. I told him I needed time. Then I hung up. And I just sat there, heart tight, not angry, not broken, just still. That night, I went into the garage and pulled out the old blueprint tube from the top shelf. The original house plans. I'd saved every copy, my rough sketches, the final drafts, the printout from the city office. I spread them across the workbench. All those lines and labels, every square foot planned with care. A home meant to hold generations. I stared at them for a long time. Then I took the lighter from the toolbox drawer. It only took a second for the flame to catch. The edges curled. The ink turned to smoke. I stood and watched as the pages turned to ash in the old grill out back. There was no anger in it, just release. The next morning, I wiped the last layer of dust from the rocking chair and placed it on my porch. It gleamed in the morning sun, restored, whole again. Quietly proud. They wanted the house, but now they needed the man who built it. I was out on the porch, polishing the arms of the old cedar rocker. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the yard. Just as I reached for the can of wax, I heard footsteps coming up the gravel path. It wasn't the mailman. Too late in the day, I turned, and there they were. David and Megan. No Angela. David looked like a man who'd been walking uphill all day, carrying something heavy that finally broke him down enough to stop. Megan wore a backpack and carried a square package, wrapped in brown paper and tied with string like an old-time Christmas gift. "Hi, Grandpa," she said softly. "I brought you something." I stood, unsure what to feel: shock, relief, fear, maybe all of it. She held the box out, both hands. I asked Daddy to help me make it. I took the package and slowly undid the twine. Inside was a framed photo of the three of us. Years ago. Me holding a fishing rod. David with his arm around me. Megan, no more than 5, covered in mud and smiling like the sun lived in her cheeks. Beneath the photo, she'd written in crayon, "Come back soon, Grandpa. Love, Meg." My throat tightened. I blinked hard. David cleared his throat. "I know we haven't earned our way back. I know that." I didn't interrupt. I let him speak. "Angela, she always felt like she had to prove something to you, and I let her run with it. I thought if I stayed quiet, it'd keep the peace, but all it did was push you out." He pulled a cloth-wrapped bundle from his coat. I recognized it right away. My naval cap. It was the same one I wore when I came home in '83, tucked inside my duffel. It had a bent brim and faded stitching. But it still held every lesson the ocean ever taught me. He handed it to me now, pressed, clean, mounted in a glass frame. At the bottom was a small brass plaque, for the man who taught us what it means to build something that lasts. David looked at me not as a son desperate for approval, but as a man owning his mistakes. "We don't expect anything. Just thought. You should know we remember." I looked down at Megan, who had already taken her place on the edge of the rocker, feet swinging just above the porch floor. "You still like root beer floats?" I asked her. She grinned. "Only if we use the tall glasses." I held the door open. No grand speeches, no dramatic music, just the sound of the screen door creaking open again. The house might have slipped from my hands, but maybe, just maybe, my family hadn't. It's been a year. I didn't move back. Never planned to. Truth is, the condo suits me just fine. Every Saturday morning, Megan comes over. She brings a little toolbox her dad helped her paint, and together we work on scraps of cedar and oak. She's got a steady hand. A sharp eye, just like her grandma did when she sewed quilts that could warm your soul. We're building a birdhouse this week. It's shaped like a lighthouse, with tiny stairs and a painted door. Megan says birds deserve homes with character. I think she's right. David comes by more often now, sometimes alone, sometimes with Angela. She never stays long. But she sends birthday cards now, sometimes a pie. We're not close the way we used to be, but we're civil. We share a table now and then, and that's more than I thought I'd get back. Funny thing is, I used to think my legacy would be that house. I poured every dollar, every intention, every ounce of dad pride into that place. The windows faced the sunrise. The floors didn't squeak. I even picked out the tree in the front yard myself. But I see it clearer now. The real legacy isn't in the lumber or the keys. It's in the way Megan leans in when I explain how to use the chisel. It's in David's voice when he says, "Thanks, Dad," and means it not for the house, but for coming back from the silence. It's in the way I still sit on that cedar rocker, the one I refinished when I had no place to go but forward. You can build them a house, but they have to build the home. And sometimes you're not the builder, sometimes you're just the quiet foundation they remember was always there. I don't regret giving them that house. I regret thinking I had to give all of me with it. Now I give what matters: time, presence, and a little sawdust in Megan's hair. If you've ever had to choose between your dignity and someone you love, what did you do? Tell me in the comments. And if this story touched you, hit like and subscribe for more true life reflections like this one.